Part 1 Video.
Hi there. So some of the key facts are below written. That will be the first one will be this case study is all about a spill of ethyl benzene into a river that ended up affecting a multitude of people. The second one will be the warning letter had unfortunately arrived 3 days late, meaning people had been using the water regularly while it had been contaminated. The third one will be more than 2,000 people were affected by the spill, and the last one will be the spill not only affected the water, but also the quality of the air as well.
So these are the ethical issues. First one is that health and safety is one ethical issue that comes to mind as the government and these companies fail to prevent this spill from occurring. And they were also unable to send a warning letter within a reasonable amount of time to ensure that people were not harmed by this accident. And the another ethical issue is that not enough resources went into preventing these spills from happening, leading to these mistakes being able to occur. The government needed to do a better job of informing residents of communities that could be affected by these large-scale spills, so that they can be reassured, better prepared if something like this happens again. And people were left without water abruptly.
Ethical responsibilities of the government. One key ethical responsibility of the government is to make sure that they first provide the necessary funds to these companies so that they can properly prepare and prevent spills like this one. The government needs to make sure and regulate that companies are trying to actively prevent spills from happening and are figuring out ways to shut off the problem at the source if a spill occurs. The government should issue a warning letter immediately or do a broadcast to ensure that the potential communities that are affected will know immediately that something is wrong and to not use the water in any way.
So, to recognize ethical issues. An ethical issue that came up was that the government needed to act quickly on the situation in order to inform the people affected as soon as possible. The government was also forced an ethical dilemma of having to face the people and acknowledge that they screwed up. Also, that they need to take the blame and compensate the people that were affected by the spill. And the government needs to be honest with its people to make sure that they understand the problem by being fully informed. And lastly, working on spending more time on preventing spills instead of completely ignoring it.
G. Generate alternative options. One option could be for the government to respond to the crisis right away and not worry about having their image detrimented. Instead of worrying about blame, acting on the situation immediately to make sure as little people are affected as possible. Another option for the government is to protect their image to make sure that there is no panic while the spill begins to affect people. After making sure that there is no panic, they can begin to take steps toward facing this situation. Another response could be learning from this mistake and making sure that plants are regulated to also focus on prevention of these spills. Focusing mainly on the future and not focusing as much on the current situation by making these plants in a secluded area in which people won't be affected in the case of a spill.
A. Analyze option using consequentialism, deontology, and virtue ethics. Consequentialism. Using this perspective, a person would choose option 1 because it means that the least amount of people will get harmed by the spill. The quick action of the government would allow for people to start planning ahead before they can be infected by the contaminated water. Deontology. With this approach would also choose option 1 because it provides the best way for the government to be honest with the people and respect their basic human rights to this knowledge. It gets straight to the point by immediately notifying communities following the deontology approach. Virtue ethics. Using virtue ethics option, one would be chosen as it results in keeping people that could be affected the safest, which is something that follows the morals that we believe. Making sure people can access potentially life-saving information is very important and prevalent in option 1.
The decide most ethical option. The most ethical option is the first option. This is because it puts the interests of the people above anything else. This option allows for people to be informed immediately before they can be affected to this potentially life-threatening water, with the downside being that the government has to tank on their reputation. By putting aside the government's reputation and possibly political party status, people will be able to prosper and not be as heavily impacted by this water as they could have been. This option allows for a greater amount of people to prosper, with only few people needing to deal with blame and backlash.